Hello, I'm Gus Downing, publisher and editor of the D&D Daily, and this is the Loss Prevention News Network. We're here today with Tom Litchford, the Vice President, Retail Technologies at the National Retail Federation. As Vice President of Retail Technologies, Tom leads and manages the NRF's Association for Retail Technology Standards, otherwise known as ARTS, and the exclusive invite-only CIO Council. He also manages the IT Security Council, and he's responsible for developing and enhancing strategic programs, activities, and relationships with retail and technology communities domestically and internationally. Tom has more than 30 years of experience in systems engineering, sales, product management, and marketing of technology business solutions for the retail and hospitality industries. Prior to assuming his current position in July of 2012, he's held key Microsoft positions in industry sales, marketing, and channel management. Prior to joining Microsoft in 1998, he was the Director of Business Impact Modeling for NCR's Retail Solutions Group, where his team developed comprehensive return on investment models. With that, we'd like to thank you for being here, Tom.
Thank you, Gus.
Tom is a subject matter expert in retail technologies and understanding our loss prevention group, our target viewers, and our industry priorities of shrinkage reduction and asset protection. How do you see the relationship changing and evolving between the LP executive and the IT security executive, especially given the fact of the rebranding efforts from the NRF Loss Prevention Conference to NRF Protect?
Right, great question. Actually, this is my first LP conference. I typically, as the IT guy, go to the IT conferences. So, here I was able actually to spend yesterday with the LP Council and several other executives from this particular community. And granted, their focus is around, shrink control and asset protection. But really, when you asked them what is top of mind, what's really going on this year, all of them said it's cybersecurity. Mm-hmm. And so with that, I think it's pretty clear that cybersecurity is not an IT-only issue. It's an issue that needs to be addressed by top management, which includes the LP organization. So with that, I think you're going to see a much closer working relationship between two groups.
Mm-hmm. Well, with mobile payments and tablet POS and same-day delivery and in-store pickup and omni-channeling rapidly unfolding in retail, that certainly changes the dynamics of the investigative processes for LP and for IT security. I mean, that brings them together in a way that the future LP executive is going to have to be rather IT-driven and to be able to understand basic IT security elements.
Right.
So do you think the profile of the successful LP executive of tomorrow is changing as fast and as much as retail itself? And what does that profile look like, in your opinion, from an IT perspective?
Right. Well, first I want to correct you with the omni-channel. The IT community has officially retired that term.
There you go.
We're tired of hearing it. It's just retail.
Sure.
And but seriously, Gus, when you look at technologies, the past 5 years, we've probably seen more thrown at us than I've seen in my 30-plus year career. And to be honest, I don't see it ending. I mean, with this whole phenomenon around IoE or Internet of Things, the latest prediction I saw was by 2020, something like 25 billion devices on the internet. that obviously introduces various levels of additional risk to retail enterprises. So at the same time, while the IT folks are responding to the challenges of how they respond to the business of addressing this new technology savvy customer, I think the LP side too is evolving to how do we address this risk. And when you look at the fact that as retailers we have to protect that data and our customers' data that's coming in, I would hope that they don't feel like they need to be deep dive technologists, but they need to understand a technology at a level so they know what they're talking about with their IT counterparts. But at the same time, I would say you probably, as an LP professional, need to really be more of that strategic business person, understanding what is the business objective that we're trying to accomplish with all this technology that's being thrown out there, and with that, what are the processes that are in place, and what data is being collected around those customers. And then with that, they can work with the IT group to develop a more effective risk management plan.
We all know about the data breaches, and that 47% of Americans have had their personal information stolen in the last year alone, and the massive spike in credit card fraud.
Right.
But once EMV is rolled out, regardless of how it ends up, PIN, signature, whatever, what do you think the impact will be once EMV is up and running on the retail industry?
Right. So let's address EMV on that one first. Let's just make it clear that EMV is a 25-year-old technology that was designed with one thing in mind: to stop lost, stolen, and counterfeit credit cards. It was put in place predominantly in the rest of the world because they didn't have the robust payment network that the U.S. had, and it's done a pretty good job at doing that. But just to be clear, some would want us to believe that it's the panacea of solving all these breach problems that we're seeing recently. And when you look at the current breaches and the amount of credit card data that was stolen, let's just be very clear that EMV would have stopped zero of that. Target lost 40 million credit cards. Had they had EMV, they would have lost 40 million credit cards. So again, it's not the panacea. And even in the US, with the implementation of what they're calling chip and signature, the rest of the world has PIN enabled. It just doesn't make sense to us when we know when we put EMV out at the card present transaction or in stores, that we're going to move a lot of that fraud to other avenues such as online. And without PIN, how are we going to combat that? So EMV as a technology is only solving a very small piece of the puzzle. So IT with that understands that they need to take additional actions, and they need to look at perhaps better and stronger technologies than EMV to protect corporate sensitive data such as payment data. And they're looking at things like P2P encryption and tokenization. And again, in this case, it's just payment data, but from a corporate perspective, we've got to look at protecting the PII data, or personally identifiable information of our customers and our employees, protecting sensitive corporate data such as financial or trade secret data. So while IT is doing that, I think it would behoove the LP folks to turn around and say, how do we work with IT again, understanding that that's the type of data that we're trying to protect, and work together across organizations on a risk or an enterprise risk management framework. So from that perspective, let's kind of maybe dive into, well, what is it we're up against? Why are we worried about protecting all this data? And these bad actors coming predominantly from the Eastern Bloc, Russia and Ukraine, are very sophisticated criminals. These are not your 17-year-old kids in their bedroom that are just playing games with us. So to do that, we must have board level recognition that this is an enterprise risk. This is a risk to our business, and we can't bury our heads and say this is an IT problem, you guys go solve it. We have to work across not only LP and IT, but bring in general counsel, bring in your PR communications folks, make sure you have a good incident response plan, and move from there. So I think that's how we're seeing the nature of the issue or the threat that we're working against, and how the organization has to come together to attack that.
You know, with big data, iBeacons, and real-time analytics at the door, what do you think the impact on loss prevention is going to be, and how do we make sure we get a seat at the table insofar as incorporating LP tools in all of these massive rollouts?
Right. Great question again, Gus. Again, you know, when you look, and again, you like to throw out those terms. Big data is another one we would love to see retired. I mean, because what does retail do?
As a journalist, I would as well.
We work with data. And but when you hear big data and when you hear iBeacons and the analytics associated with that, we're really talking about massive amounts of customer data about their wants, their needs, their desires, and if you're a really good retailer, maybe even how they really behave when you put out these marketing offers to them. So again, with that, I think, you know, from the IT perspective, we enable that stuff, and what we really need to do is make sure that across the organization, particularly LP, can stand up and be the leaders here and say, look, this is the data we have to protect. This is our customers' data, and working together, how do we put a risk mitigation plan in place?
Is there any advice you'd give a young LP executive, understanding the IT background, but also seeing kind of the worlds getting closer and closer together? You know, what would you say to the young LP executive that wants to shoot for that senior role later on in their career?
Right.
And how do they, you know, develop that strong relationship with your group, so to speak?
Right. You know, I would just go back to my background and how I came up. I would say, never ever stop asking questions. And you know, as a person coming up, you need to really understand the whole business. I mean, I know you have a role. My role was IT. My role was providing solutions to solve business problems. But I needed to understand the whole business and what the business was trying to do. So never lose that passion for learning, and always ask questions.
Oh, thanks, Tom.
All right, thank you.
And that's it for this episode. We want to thank you for watching. And now, back over to Joe.